the Piedmont Triad League of Women Voters presents the 2011 Greensboro Mayoral Candidate Forum.
We will begin our forum today. Each of our candidates has been told that they would be allowed to make an opening statement of 1.5 minutes. We do have timekeepers in the front of the room that will help them stick to their time limits. And I will ask Mr. Cohn to please begin.
Yes, I'm Bradford Cohn. Bradford Cohn. I'm running for mayor. I'd like to thank all of you for coming out here. My central platform is I oppose the landfill. If it is reopened before the election, I will close it. I also support a strong manager in the city government so that the city employees have one person to answer to instead of a board of people, which should make running the government more efficient. It will also prevent the city council from micromanaging and taking actions such as firing the city attorney for political reasons. I also believe that we need to continue to fund central services such as fire, police, water, and sewer. We also need to continue the economic development of Greensboro through events at the Coliseum, which should bring in people, and building up around the Coliseum would also make it would bring in more people to events there because they'd be able to go out before the event, eat, and then walk to Coliseum. Thank you.
Mr. Chris Phillips.
I want to thank everyone for being here, and I feel honored to be before each and every one of you this afternoon. I'm Chris Phillips, running for mayor of Greensboro, and my biggest platform that I'm running on is jobs and economic growth. Greensboro has a population of over 250,000 people. We also right now face 10.2% unemployment in the city of Greensboro. If we do the math, that means over 25,000 people in Greensboro are not working. And for my race, African Americans, it's almost double that. And I feel that I can bring a new, fresh voice to Greensboro politics. And my goal would be, if I'm elected mayor, would be to bring everyone together so we can make Greensboro a better city for our residents, try to get people jobs, try to improve economic growth, and try to get people who live on public assistance off of public assistance, make them more self-reliant. Thank you very much.
Mr. Tom Phillips.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. I am Tom Phillips, and I'm running for the office of mayor because I've become very concerned about the divisiveness on the council. They have become dysfunctional, and I think it's going to require leadership from outside the current council to try and correct that behavior. I have lived in Greensboro for 36 years. 34 of those years I've been a financial advisor for Merrill Lynch. I will be retiring at the end of December, so I'll have plenty of time to devote to being mayor of Greensboro. Married 43 years, have 2 children, 3 grandchildren, and I've been involved in public service in the community for the last 26 years. Starting on the Zoning Commission in 1985, I've served off and on the city council for a total of 12 years, not consecutive, and then for the past 19 years, and I am still a director of the Piedmont Triad Regional Water Authority, which has brought us our new Randleman Dam, which is our next water supply for the next 50 years. So I've got some experience in regional efforts, which is going to be important in the future. I believe that I have the communication skills, the leadership skills, and the experience to help, with your help, lead our city into the future. I think Greensboro is a great place to live, and we have a lot of things going for us. Thank you.
And Mr. Robbie Perkins.
Thank you. I'm Robbie Perkins, and Running for mayor of the city of Greensboro is something that has been on my mind for a while. I've been on city council all but 2 years since 1993, serving as a District 3 representative from 1993 to 2005, and then took 2 years off from 2005 to 2007. And then when my friend Yvonne Johnson decided that she would run for mayor, I said I would try to come back and help her. This organization, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for the stands that you take in our community to do the right thing. For many, many years, you have stood up for Greensboro and for the ethical principles that we should live by as a city. And I see Mayor Allen here somewhere. It's my privilege to serve with her, and for Mayor Johnson, Goldie Wells here. And of course, I've been speaking with Goldie off and on last night and this morning about this landfill situation. And it's something we're working hard on to try to solve a problem for Greensboro instead of divide this city. One of the things that's pained me most about the last 18 months is that our city has been divided over a number of issues that we did not need to address, that we could have addressed in a much more proactive and positive fashion. Greensboro needs jobs, it needs economic development, and the way you do that is to work together as one city, not divided.
Mr. Bill Knight declined our invitation to attend today. He asked that I read a statement, and that statement will be followed by a statement that was authored by the management team of the League of Women Voters Piedmont Triad. Mr. Knight's statement. Our city attorney has made me aware that the League of Women Voters is plaintiff in a lawsuit against the Greensboro City Council in a matter related to solid waste disposal. In light of that information, I have decided not to participate in the League Forum scheduled to be held at Holy Trinity Church. And statement from the League of Women Voters Piedmont Triad. The League's leadership team wants you to have this additional clarification to help you better understand the legal steps we have taken in 2 separate actions related to the White Street landfill. Each of these was based on our positions on the vital nature of citizen participation, open government, and social and environmental justice. In the first, a lawsuit filed in May, we acted as plaintiffs. This suit sought an injunction to require the city of Greensboro to follow all procedures required by state law before entering into a contract with a private waste disposal company. That suit is ongoing. In the second, we filed on behalf of defendants, the city of Greensboro, and 2 city council members in a suit brought by contractor Gate City Waste Services, the plaintiff. The League filed in support of the city in this action, as detailed in the statement sent to League members last week. The first question, gentlemen. Chris, if you would answer this first, please. What is your reaction to the mayor's not attending today?
Well, I believe that all the candidates who were invited to come, I think they should be here to speak to you people, to you folks. I can't speak for the mayor, but speaking for myself, I feel honored to be here and to speak to everyone who is here in attendance today. I feel that running for mayor or any elected office is important. I feel that public servants serve you. You don't serve us, we serve you. So Mayor Knight not coming, I wish he was here so he can be with the rest of us, but as for me personally, I feel honored to be here, and I'm just hoping that I can earn your vote and your support.
Tom?
Well, I think it's unfortunate that the mayor has chosen to not be here. I could understand if there were certain questions asked that he felt he couldn't answer because of lawsuits. But this is really to talk to all the citizens about a variety of issues, and I personally think he should be here.
Robbie?
Just because you disagree with a group's position doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to the group and get input if you're the mayor of the city of Greensboro.
Bradford?
I think he may have been afraid of a hostile audience. However, he is the mayor of all of Greensboro, not just the people who voted for him. So he should be listening to the concerns of all of Greensboro.
Tom? What are your current plans if elected to the new council, if the current council signs a contract and reopens the landfill?
Well, it depends on how the contract is written. The future council may, may have its hands tied, but we'd have to look at that. They're going to vote tonight on this contract without even seeing the contract, which is kind of crazy to me, but that's the way they're going to do it. But we would have to take a look to see what we could do. I think we're heading down the wrong path, that if we use up our capacity in the White Street landfill without a long-term solution, it can cost us considerably more in the future. They're making short-term decisions when this is a long-term issue.
Robbie, what are your plans if the current council signs a contract and reopens the landfill to municipal solid waste?
You know, I think we're going to vote 4-4 tonight to on the contract. That's going to cause the contract to be defeated. The process needs to be restarted without White Street on the table as an option. I think we can save money utilizing a better recycling program, more efficient recycling program. I think we can look at the methane gas that's coming out of White Street as a money-making resource. I think we can look at a shorter distance to haul any garbage that needs to be hauled to a rural landfill in, say, Randolph County. But the ultimate goal is to come up with a 100-year plan that's sustainable, that we're not going to just be kicking the can down the road and have to worry about this every 4 or 5 years. And that's what we ought to be working on.
Bradford?
Yes, if they sign a contract, which I don't think they will, but if they do, I would close the landfill. If there's a contract, there is always a loophole in it. So just have to find that. And we also need to develop a long-term plan, including recycling and the Randolph landfill. Also mining the methane. And I've heard there's a grant to, I believe it was NC State, to develop landfill mining. So that would also be something to think about, as well as the need to decontaminate the area around the White Street landfill.
Chris?
I would have to agree with what Mr. Tom Phillips and Mr. Perkins said. I think this is a long-term problem that needs to be looked at from all sides, and we need to make sure that, you know, if we're going to reopen the White Street landfill, we need to make sure that it is the best option. If they haven't looked at all options, I think they're making the wrong decision. So if they do sign this contract, and if I'm elected mayor, I would have to look at all options to make sure it is the best option for Greensboro and the residents who live in that neighborhood.
Robbie, I have a question, a new question for you. What have you learned about alternatives to landfills that involve methods other than landfill disposal of solid waste?
Well, at some point, I believe that the federal government will say you can't bury the trash in the ground anymore. So at some point, we'll have to deal with it in either a waste to energy situation or something other than burying the trash. The waste to energy concept is more expensive than burying the trash in the ground in North Carolina, because land is not that expensive here in this state. The waste to energy concepts are being pioneered in New York City and Los Angeles right now with pilot programs. They have large R&D budgets, and they're working on that as we speak. I would say within 4 or 5 years, they will have determined what version of this type of waste-to-energy system is the most efficient and reliable, and we can choose at that point in time to get into that type of game. Right now, if Greensboro, a small city like Greensboro, made that choice, it would be like deciding to buy a Betamax or a VHS. You wouldn't know which one to buy. But let the big cities with the big R&D budgets figure out what the best system is, and then let us come in. Garbage is a business that the economics is based on economies of scale. And if you have a lot of garbage, you can process it efficiently. If you have a little bit of garbage, it costs you a lot per ton to process it. So the best solution from a waste-to-energy or a total recycling package is to pool all of the garbage from central North Carolina and bring it all to one site and process it all at one time. That's the most logical way to do this long term.
Bradford?
Yes, we need to look at all the options and see what is being developed in the major cities, as well as any possibilities from other countries. We need to be able to dispose of the trash in a way that doesn't contaminate the groundwater, as well as we need to increase the amount of recycling. If the garbage mining works, then we should be able to process it before we put it in the ground. And I think we should stop using landfills in the next 10 to 15 years. I've also heard the possibility of incinerating the trash and then collecting the gases for recycling. Some of them can be broken down into useful components. Thank you.
Chris, what other alternatives to landfills have you learned about?
Well, to be honest, this is an issue that I have not really researched, so I'm not going to pretend to sit here and know everything about this issue, but in listening to Mr. Perkins, listening to other people, I would have to agree. I'd say let's find the best option to find out turning waste into energy, what works, what other cities are doing, what is working, and let Greensboro come in after that and see if this is going to work for our city. Again, the goal, I believe, is to save the city money and to make sure that the residents of the area, they are not affected by any poor decisions that is made.
Yes, I started looking at this about 10 years ago when we were having the first discussions about the White Street landfill. And Robbie hit on a lot of important things there. I talked to the president of a waste-to-energy company out of Canada, and he basically said the capital costs are too high and land is too cheap in the South, and that landfills were the only real viable alternative at that time. And if you look on the internet under waste-to-energy costs, you'll see a site come up that's a waste-to-energy plant in Spokane, Washington, and they go into great detail showing you all the costs, how much they make from generating electricity, and it nets out at about $65 a ton, which is almost, double what we currently pay. So it's not efficient for us. And what they told me before was where it makes sense, of course, is where land costs are real high and you're having to ship it an extremely long way, like from New York to South Carolina. And if you have a lot of industrial waste, which generally has, they can get higher fees for handling that can cause the municipal waste to be cheaper. But something we have to continue to look at, but I think it's many years before that will become an economic alternative for us on handling waste.
Bradford, do you support the creation of a regional landfill solution? And if so, what process would you use to start those discussions, in particular with Randolph County?
I believe Randolph County has already started working towards that, and we should work with Randolph County to work on a regional landfill. Also, I think landfill would be a stopgap measure until we can find a way to dispose of our trash other than just burying it in the ground. And That's it.
Chris?
Yes, I would be in support of Randolph County helping to dispose of trash. And again, as I've said before, again, looking at all the options that are on the table to make sure that we are doing the right thing for the residents of Greensboro and the residents of White Street who live in that area. So I would definitely be in support of Randolph County.
Tom?
Well, having served for 19 years on the Regional Water Authority, I can tell you regionalism is not easy. It takes a lot of work. And one of the things that you really have to do is respect the politics of your neighbors. You can't get out in front in the News and Record or other media talking about what Greensboro wants to do with their landfill. That's makes it very difficult for Randolph County to try and deal with the politics that they have to deal with. What we need to do immediately is we need to talk to our neighbors. Now, Keith Holliday did this 10 years ago, and there wasn't much interest when he was looking at trying to do something regionally. I've heard that there are some that may be interested now, but we need to quietly sit down with them, find out what their interests are, and if there is interest in doing something regionally, and you may phase in different people at different times, but then I think you ought to set up an authority like we did for Randleman Lake, and that helps take the politics out of it. You let an authority work on that rather than the talking heads changing every 2 years. You have an authority that can work together and learn to trust each other, and I think we definitely need to work on that.
Well, as we've seen in Greensboro, nobody wants to have a landfill in their backyard. And the unique situation in Randolph County is an opportunity because they have an existing landfill in a very rural area with a lot of acreage that can be expanded that's only 23 miles from center city of Greensboro. So it makes sense for us to consider that alternative. And when I brought that to the city council, for them to reach out to, or for the council to give the city manager the authority to at least discuss that with his peer in Randolph County, there wasn't support for that, even asking the question of Randolph County. Now, before I even brought it up, I picked up the phone and called Darrell Fry, who's the chairman of the Board of Commissioners of Randolph County, and said, Darrell, what do you think about this? Darrell said, number one, we don't need Greensboro involved in the ownership of our landfill. Number two, we'd love to have you as a customer of our Randolph County landfill if you would consider that. And then you bring that back to the manager and you let the manager do his job. Let him negotiate the contracts. Let him come up with the right solution. We're skipping steps here with the process. And what's happened in the Greensboro landfill process is the council or the group that's trying to run reopen the landfill has basically decided to micromanage the process. And they've gone in and done their own discovery, done their own work, and have kept the manager from doing his job. And they've disregarded the manager's advice at every turn in this process.
I would like to remind the candidates, we do have a few people in the room that are having a little bit of trouble hearing, so make sure these are one-directional microphones that you have, so make sure it's close to your mouth while you're speaking, please. Chris, you have the first answer on this question. What plans do you have to help our city heal after the landfill issue is resolved?
Wow. Okay. Well, first, can everybody hear me? I would say that if I'm elected mayor, the first day, I would try to bring the council and everyone together, and I would try then to schedule a public forum, and I think an effective leader can effectively communicate a message to people. And so what I would do is I would try to ensure the people of Greensboro, the residents, that whatever decision is made is the right decision. Not saying that I'm going to change everybody's mind or anything like that, but try to bring the citizens of Greensboro together. A decision was made. It is the right decision. Explain why it's the right decision, and then try to move on to other issues that are affecting the city.
Tom?
Well, I think communication is the important thing, and we haven't had much of that. We haven't had communication between council members. The mayor's role is to be talking to council members all the time. We haven't had communication with the media. When they call, you need to return their phone calls. That hadn't been happening. And most importantly, you need to have a lot of communication with the public. You may have to make decisions that are not pleasant, but it's important that the mayor gets out and meets with various groups in the community to explain what the city is trying to do and to get input from the citizens. And input has been ignored in council meetings and elsewhere. And I think that's the best way to kind of restore things, is to build trust with the public, and so that there's real transparency. If somebody asks you a question, you need to answer it. And that hasn't been happening either.
Robbie?
I would enlist Yvonne Johnson to go out and give everybody a hug. And seriously, that's what this community needs right now. I mean, the communications piece is huge, and we can't continue to fracture this community by dealing with issues that without adequate public input, adequate study, we can't do business that way. We didn't do business that way for the first 14 years I was on city council. We've done business that way the last 18 months, and we can't afford to do business that way in the future, and we're not going to do business that way in the future. We've got to build consensus in this community. Mayor Allen wears that very nicely. Consensus, and then we've got to decide what our goals are and our priorities, and we've got to go do it together. There's enough to compete against the rest of the world without fussing among ourselves. We've got to make that change.
Bradford?
We need better communications, and we have to remember that everyone on the council is working towards making Greensboro a better place, so we should start with that as common ground. We should also allow for public input and move the public input part of the meeting to the beginning so that people don't have to sit through procedural votes before they can say anything. We also should not try to bring up issues that are as divisive that don't need to be brought up. So we shouldn't be making decisive decisions. And listen to the people when they talk and ask questions. Keep the media in the loop. Don't not return their phone calls. And just communicate with each other on the board as well, so that, and with the city manager, so we know where everyone's at and make sure everyone's on the same page.
Tom? Our city is, Tom, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And a new question. Our city is hurting economically. What specific steps would you take to encourage job creation in Greensboro?
Well, first, everyone has to understand that the city of Greensboro doesn't create jobs, but what we need to do is work together with our economic development partners to make sure we're doing everything we possibly can to promote the city. First thing we need to do, and I hate to harp on it, but we need a civil and rational governing body that can work effectively with the economic development folks. people look on the internet, and that includes companies that might be thinking about coming to Greensboro. And we need to be trying to put our best foot forward. That doesn't mean cover up problems that we might have, but I have clients around the country who have ties to Greensboro, and they look on the internet or look at the news and record, and they call me and say, what on earth is happening with that city council? And so that's the first thing we need to do. I then want to sit down with the economic development folks to really find out what it is they're doing. And one of the things I'd like to do if I'm mayor is to start out with maybe going back to the last 10, 15, 20 companies that have come to Greensboro and find out what it was that put Greensboro on their radar. And then what made them decide to come, to find out whether we had anything to do with it or not, or whether it just there were other extenuating circumstances. But I think that's the first step to finding out how to best use our funds.
Robbie, what would you do to help create jobs for Greensboro?
You know, city government may not create jobs for Greensboro, but leadership can create jobs for Greensboro. We need to have a proactive mayor that can take the council and work with the council as a group, because the mayor only has one vote, and set an agenda that will, number one, maintain our infrastructure, number two, promote our city in a positive fashion, number three, reach out to regional partners in the Triad, and work together, because when these companies come into our region, they don't care whether they're located in Greensboro, Winston-Salem, High Point, Kernersville, unincorporated Guilford County, or Burlington. They're coming to the Piedmont Triad, and we need to function together as a region to be competitive. Do we want to be positioned between Peoria, Illinois, and San Bernardino, or do we want to be between Nashville, Tennessee, and Austin, Texas? It's a question of marketing. It's a question of how you position yourself, how you sell yourself. We've got to go out and do that, and the mayor's role is to be a cheerleader in that respect. That the mayor has to be out in front. The mayor has to show up and speak to the public. The mayor has to be involved in the economic development process with our folks in the Greensboro Partnership, but also with David Powell in the Piedmont Triad Partnership. Also with Alan Joines as the mayor of Winston-Salem and Becky Smothers as the mayor of High Point. We have to work together to be effective. We've got an opportunity in Greensboro right now, because we have a United States Senator that lives here in Greensboro. We have a United States Senator that lives in Winston-Salem. We have the President Pro Tem of the North Carolina Senate that lives in Eden. If we can't make something happen economic development-wise in this region with those three people living where they live, then we're not asking the right questions.
Bradford, how would you encourage job creation in Greensboro?
We need to look at small businesses, find out what they need to help them grow, and what we could use to encourage people to create small businesses, which would in turn employ people. We also need to ensure that we have a well-educated workforce and work with the county to ensure that we have quality schools and make sure GTCC stays on track and continues to produce educated workers. We also can, I suppose, work through zoning to increase building up around the Coliseum area and downtown, so that we can bring in people who, for events such as the ice skating or the Science Center has brought in a lot of people through the Titanic and Bodies exhibits. These people who come into town have to eat and stay somewhere, so that helps the city, and in terms of people would need to employ people in order to handle the increased volume. Also, the council needs to start working together instead of as two separate parties, and so that when city companies look at Greensboro, they know that the city council will stay stable and they won't have their answers changed from year to year. Thank you.
Chris.
Well, the first thing that I would like to focus on if I'm elected mayor to help bring jobs to Greensboro is making sure that Greensboro is spending its money wisely. I want to make sure that we can offer incentives to companies to come to Greensboro, making sure that the quality of life is good here, our schools, our neighborhoods. I'd like to work hopefully with our state legislature, and they can work with the federal to cut tax burdens on businesses. I'd like to work with our small business men and women to make sure that they can hire people, hire workers who need jobs. We need to make sure that we have good real estate here so companies can come here. We can lay that foundation for companies to come, to move to Greensboro and hire good workers who need these jobs. I have to agree with Tom. We need a good economic development team, one who is committed to making jobs and creating jobs and economic growth for the city of Greensboro. I would be committed to that.
Robbie, this next question, we will begin with you. This question is related to our city's infrastructure. We have had to, as a city of Greensboro, cut back on expenditures on some of our critical infrastructure that relates to economic development and quality of life, such as road maintenance, planning for long-term water issues and things like that. Do you think we're spending enough on infrastructure? And if not, what would we do to get some resources for that?
Well, one of the things that you have to look at with critical infrastructure is it's a very, very long-term investment. And one of the things that I think the council made a mistake on this year was lowering the water rates in our public utility, 6%, when every other utility owner, whether it be a county or a city in the state, raised theirs significantly. The reason that you need to have your water rates are going to increase over time. Greensboro's got a very small creek that runs through it, and that's where we get our water, except for Randleman Dam, and our cost structure is higher than it is in most of the areas in the state. And we need to make sure that we can continue to invest in that infrastructure by having a stable stream of income coming in from our water users. That means that we need to have a long-term plan, and we stick with the long-term plan. Used to be in the old days that the federal government would pay 80% of a sewer plant. The state government would pay 10% of a sewer plant, and the local government would pay 10%. Now we're paying 100%. And those costs, because of environmental regulations, are going to continue to increase. And we've got to continue to put very a discipline in this process of maintaining our infrastructure. When you go out to Lake Townsend and you have a diver tap on the dam, and the rod that he's using to tap on the dam goes in 18 inches in your dam, and you've got a $40 million expense, you better have a little dry powder in your account to make the replacement of that dam. When you have sewage overruns in Latham Park, and the EP and the Diener comes in and says, we're not going to give you a building permit in this city unless you fix this, and the bill is $50 million, you better have a little extra cash in the drawer. We've got to have a long-term focus on this infrastructure. It can't be done quarter to quarter or day to day.
Bradford.
Now would be the wrong time to be cutting infrastructure spending. Companies will be less likely to come to Greensboro if we don't have the infrastructure to support them. We need to work on the sewer. If there's no sewer, then we couldn't. Also, companies won't be able to come here. Also, building up infrastructure would create jobs which are badly needed in the region. So cutting taxes would also be a bad idea at this time, and the water rate should probably be raised back up to where it was so that we have the necessary funds to continue to improve and expand water and sewer. Also, the bridges and roads need to be well maintained. If we don't maintain them properly now, we're going to have to spend a lot more in the long run to fix them after they've started to collapse. Also, we don't want tragedies such as bridge collapses to happen either. So it's very important that we maintain these structures. and maintain their structural integrity. Thank you.
Chris?
Well, definitely infrastructure is definitely important and vital to Greensboro. So I just want to go back to what I said earlier again. I think making sure that Greensboro is spending its money wisely, making sure we have a good infrastructure. And I think, again, by getting people jobs, people are working, they have to pay taxes. That's going to bring in more revenue. Bringing in that revenue, making sure that money is spent wisely on our infrastructure to keep infrastructure safe and correct. That is going to help Greensboro be a better city.
And Tom?
I think everybody's about covered it here. Next to public safety, the infrastructure, maintaining our infrastructure is right up there with it. It is crucial to economic development, quality of life, a whole long list of things. Unfortunately, we got a very slow economy. Hopefully, we're going to start working our way out of that. But the longer that goes on, we're going to have to make a lot of tough decisions about what we're going to do. But I think we have to say we've got to maintain that infrastructure. Coliseum was a good example of that. They didn't do maintenance on that for so long, and the auditorium out there is falling apart. And if you don't do the things you're supposed to be doing all along, you're going to pay a lot more in the future. So I think we've got to stay focused on infrastructure.
Bradford, you'll be the first for this question. Real estate interests have frequently been very influential in our city government. How would your personal ethics play out if you were elected mayor?
Well, I am elected by the people, not the real estate market, so I'm answerable to the people. I would not make decisions that favor the real estate market over the citizenry, and I would not give a special preference to any group over another in running the city.
Chris?
Well, I would have to agree with Mr. Cohn's statement there. My personal ethics, I would want to make sure that I serve the people of Greensboro. That's my first priority. I don't believe in special interest. I would not try to favor any one group over another. My goal, my job would be to serve the people of Greensboro. That is my first priority, and that's the way I would govern my life. I would govern it based on, my relationship with Christ. I would base it on making good, positive decisions, not catering to special interest. I don't believe in that.
Well, I think my record stands for itself. My 12 years on the city council and 4 years on the zoning commission, I have always been a very independent person, not a member of special interest groups, and I've always tried to make decisions that I feel are best for the entire community. And I don't have conflicts of interest and wouldn't have, particularly being retired in December, I wouldn't have any conflicts of interest on zoning cases. And, the development community gets criticized for having too much influence. It's not their fault. It's the fault of the elected officials if they are allowing themselves to be influenced. They're just doing what they do, and it's up to the elected officials to remain independent.
Well, since I'm in the commercial real estate business, I'm going to take the same position as Mr. Phillips. The real estate interests are a constituency group like many others, and there are plenty of groups in Greensboro that want to have their input on city policy. I think it's the responsibility of those of us that are on council or serve as mayor to take input from all sources and be judicious about how that input is taken and how that input is used. I've got a long track record of supporting jobs and economic development in this community, but I also have a long track record of taking stands against things that I didn't think were in the best interest of Greensboro, even if the real estate lobby decided that was something they want to do. I think the case in point there is the scenic corridors along 68 and the scenic corridor, the SCOD that's been developed along Painter Boulevard. That's a 48-mile ring around Greensboro that basically I led that fight against the billboard companies and against the real estate interests to put that in place, and it's something I'm very proud of. So I can hold my own with that lobby, and will not hesitate to speak up if I feel like they're going in the wrong direction. However, the expertise that those folks bring to the table will help create jobs and economic development opportunities in our city, and we need to balance that. Government is a process of balancing, and this is another thing where you take the good ideas and you employ the good ideas. You don't shut the good ideas out. You bring everybody's ideas to the table, you come up with a consensus, you come up with a plan, and you execute.
Chris, another contentious issue that our city council dealt with in the spring was the drawing of new electoral maps in the process of redistricting. Do you support the creation of a citizens commission to lead the process for future redistricting efforts?
I would say yes to that. Redistricting along with the landfill probably have been the two most divisive issues in the 20 years that I've lived in Greensboro. Again, I think the citizens have a voice. We work for you. Elected officials work for you. I think citizens should have a voice. I would definitely be in support of citizens taking a process in the redistricting of Greensboro.
Tom?
I wouldn't have any problem with that. If the city council would stay out of the way, you wouldn't have that problem. All the years that I had been on the council, when we had that issue come up, the staff would say, here's what we recommend, and would give their reasoning behind what they were recommending. And it was usually just some minor modifications so that we balanced the districts out. And we didn't get into this political fighting about it. But I wouldn't have any trouble having citizen input on that either. I mean, you would obviously have input in a public hearing, but I wouldn't mind having a committee, just as long as you don't come up with your plan that shows up on your doorstep.
Robbie?
You stole my line, Tom. I can't think of a process, except for the landfill, that has been mishandled by a public body as poorly as this redistricting process. It started when the majority of council appointed one member of council who happened to be a district representative to lead the redistricting effort. I mean, how can you do that? And when those of us that were in the minority wanted to add other members to that committee, we got outvoted. And then when the plan was found on the doorstep, it was just clearly a divisive plan, and we argued against that, but were outvoted again. And thankfully, the citizens of the city of Greensboro said, this is ridiculous, it's time to stop. And we were able to get enough votes to reconsider the issue, put a plan that was better on the table, and move forward. But the process is what has been flawed with this council. There has been no process. There has been our way or the highway. There has not been enough input from the city manager and the legal staff and listening to professionals, and we've just got to change it because this is unacceptable.
Bradford?
For years, this has been a political issue where each party tries to gain more power through redistricting, and we need to stop this. It should not be a political issue. It shouldn't be Democrats versus Republicans. So a citizens committee would help to alleviate that, as well as giving credence to the city managers and his staff's redistricting plans. So yes, it's a good idea.
Tom? Some neighboring cities and counties have had concerns raised about racial discrimination by police officers at checkpoints. Do you believe we have a similar problem in Greensboro, and why or why not?
Racial discrimination at checkpoints. If that is considered a problem in Greensboro, I'm not aware of that. I haven't seen that. I read the paper regularly, and I haven't seen that brought up as an issue. We've had other discrimination issues brought up, but I haven't heard that one. And if there has been, I apologize for not knowing about it.
Robbie?
I'm not aware of it being an issue here in our city at this point. If it was an issue, our manager and our police chief would do everything in their power to stop it, and it's not acceptable in terms of policy for the city of Greensboro, and it wouldn't be tolerated by either the manager, the police chief, or I believe the council.
Bradford?
Yes, in the last election cycle, I was told that there were checkpoints put up in African American neighborhoods to do warrant service, which had the effect of preventing people from going to the polls. The police said that this was just a miscommunication and that they had planned it for a while, and I would like to believe that. So that what we need to do is make sure the police understand the implications of the actions they take, and we also have to make sure they communicate with the communities, and so that we can alleviate the problem or the perception of a problem. And we also need to investigate if, in fact, there is racial discrimination, because we can't allow that in the police department or anywhere in the city.
Chris?
I would have to agree with Mr. Phillips and Mr. Perkins that it's an issue that I'm not aware of either. But if it were an issue in Greensboro, then I don't believe it should be tolerated. And I believe that our police chief, our police department would do everything in their power to stop it. I know that if it were an issue in Greensboro, if I were elected mayor, it would be an issue that I would fully consider taking control of. That should not be tolerated anywhere in this United States of America.
Robbie, do you believe the city attorney should report to the city manager or to the full council, and why?
Well, I think that's pretty easy given what we've been through. I voted against the change consistently over a period of time. Most of the work that the city attorney does is for the city manager. Probably 15% of the work is for the council, and 85% is for the city itself under the direction of the manager. And we had a really good system going in Greensboro. But what caused this change is just a lack of trust of the manager, and I think it was almost a slap in the face of Rashad Young when he has to recruit a city attorney that worked with him in Ohio down here, and then the council goes and tries to take that attorney and put it under them, and basically forces her out of office, and it was a very unfortunate set of circumstances because she was a very talented professional. And now we've got a situation where the attorney reports directly to the council, and I'm not sure that anybody really knows how to handle that situation right now. Fortunately, we did hire an interim city attorney named Tom Pollard, who was a 30-year veteran in Wilmington, and he's helping us walk through the process. But it's going to be a very difficult hire for the city of Greensboro to find someone a talented professional that's going to want to work for us in this environment. And I would actually recommend that we go back to the old system and try to put that in place.
Bradford?
I think that the city attorney should report to the city manager so they're not reporting to several different bosses. This would make doing their job easier and would prevent the city council from micromanaging the legal department as well. I think it was a bad idea to move the authority to the city council, and having a council run to various departments is inefficient, and having to call a council meeting every time the attorney wants to do anything is also inefficient and costly.
Chris?
Yes, I would be in full support of the attorney reporting to the city manager. the city manager holding the attorney accountable. That's one of the things that I have to worry about in my job and working in retail. I'm held accountable for what I do in my department, and I have to agree with Mr. Cohn. It keeps the city council from micromanagement. So the attorney should report to the city manager, yes.
Tom?
Well, during the years I was on the council, the attorney did report to the city manager, and there have been discussions over the years about it, and I could see pluses and minuses, and obviously it works other places in the state to have the city attorney reporting directly to the council. Matter of fact, it's just High Point and Greensboro, the only two that didn't have it that way. But it really comes down to it depends. Just like when people say, do you think you ought to merge departments with the county? I'd say, well, given what I'm seeing at the county, absolutely not. And if we had a council that respected the city manager and staff and the city attorney's role and would act more like a board of directors rather than being in there trying to micromanage, it could work the way it is. But and if I'm elected, I would try to make the system work where we relied on the city attorney and we didn't try and get in there and micromanage the city attorney.
Bradford, as mayor, what would your top 3 priorities be for the city of Greensboro?
Well, one priority is we need to help create jobs and allow businesses to expand and allow them to create jobs. We also need to ensure that the people of Greensboro have a safe and clean city to live in. Make sure the roads are and infrastructure is well maintained, and we have a good sewer system. And we also have to make sure there is maintain our diversity and not allow there to be divisions between the community. So I would try to increase communications from different sections of the community so that to prevent future conflicts.
Chris, your top 3 priorities.
My top 3 priorities in this order: number 1 is jobs and economic growth. Number 2 is crime and public safety, making sure that our citizens are safe and feel safe. And number 3 would be education, with Greensboro having some of the best colleges and universities in the state of UNCG, my alma mater, Greensboro College, Bennett, and A&T, making sure that our students are going to be the best educated students for the jobs of the future. So jobs and economic growth, crime and public safety, and education would be my top 3 priorities.
Well, my first priority would be getting back to having a rational and civil and welcoming elected body, because that affects everything else. Second thing would be economic development. With unemployment, we've got to do what we can to try and bring jobs to the community, but that includes things we've talked about today, like focusing on infrastructure, because that's part of economic development. Then the third thing, and I was going to comment on it in our closing comments, is I think if you're watching what's going on in Washington, they're going to be making cuts. They have to. That filters to the state, and then we're at the bottom of the food chain. We're going to have a lot of demands placed on us as things do get cut. And I think we're going to have to, and we need to start right now, not cutting, but sitting down and defining what the role of city government should be. And so that we're prepared when and if it happens, and it may not happen overnight, but we need to know, here's what's important. Absolutely, we've got to do. And then we got to look at some of the frills that, unfortunately, while we may like those things, If times get tough, we know we have a plan in place of what we're going to do. And I think we need to have citizen involvement in that. And it comes down to communication also, so that everybody understands the dilemma we might get put in.
Robbie?
You know, my top three list are jobs, public safety, and maintaining your infrastructure. City government needs to return to being boring. I've said that before. I mean, there isn't a Democratic and Republican way to fix a pothole. We need to fix the pothole. And so if you're really going to get down to it, we don't need to be in the headlines as a city council every day because of our divisiveness. We need to come together as a mayor and a council, as you do with the chairman of a board and a board of directors, and we need to provide strategic direction to our chief executive officer and his team and hold them accountable for executing that strategic direction. This is not a complicated business model. This is something that if we do our jobs and we understand our roles, we can be successful on the top three priorities of job creation, improving our public safety, and maintaining our infrastructure.
We now give each of our candidates a minute and a half to make closing statements. We will start with Mr. Perkins on that end and come this way.
You know, Greensboro is a great city. I've lived here since 1979, and I've experienced many, many benefits of living in the city of Greensboro. The biggest benefit and our biggest resource is our people, and the energy and enthusiasm and the ideas and the creativity that all of us bring to the table. And if I were elected mayor, I would want to make certain that we had input from all sectors of the city of Greensboro and use that input to put together a strategic vision that would be a shared vision for our community and work together to accomplish our goals. Everyone that I've talked to in this city pretty much wants the same thing. They want a good job so that they can support their family. They want a safe place to live, and they want a fun place to play. And by working together with a common shared vision, we can accomplish those goals. And I hope to be your mayor and lead you in that direction.
Mr. Tom Phillips.
I moved here 4 years before Robbie in 1975. So I'm an old guy. But I was only supposed to be here 3 years. I was supposed to move back to Charlotte, and I knew nothing about Greensboro. They just needed to transfer me here. But once I got here, I realized what a great place it was. And as we've heard from many people over time, it's a tremendous place to raise a family. And I decided I didn't want to move back to Charlotte. So I changed jobs, and I stayed right here in Greensboro, and it's just one of the best decisions I've ever made. Greensboro is poised for great things, I think. We've got some unemployment we got to deal with, but every other city in the United States does also. And we'll have the dealing with Washington, which every other city in the United States is going to have to deal with that. But on a relative basis, I think Greensboro is in a great situation. We have good fund balances, so we're not financially destitute. We're in a great location in the States. We've got highways coming through here. We've got more planned. We've got FedEx. We have a water supply now for 50 years or longer. So we're in a terrific position, and I think we can do great things, and I hope to serve as your mayor and work with you to achieve those things.
Mr. Chris Phillips.
Well, yes, again, I'm thankful and blessed to be among you today. I don't come as a politician. I come as a concerned citizen of Greensboro. I believe Greensboro is a great city. I moved here in 1991 to go to school at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, my alma mater. I love the city, but there are many problems in this city, just like all other cities in this nation: unemployment, jobs. I just hope that I can serve as mayor of this city, hopefully bring a fresh voice to this city, and try to bring some common sense solutions to help Greensboro be a better city. I'm hoping to earn your support and your vote this election season. Thank you.
And Mr. Bradford Cohn.
I moved to Greensboro in 1980 because my dad got a job here. I think Greensboro's greatest strength is its diversity, which is what made America great, so we should put that to work helping make Greensboro great. We also want the citizens to know that the city government is the government of all the citizens, and they should all have input into how we operate. We should encourage them to attend meetings and vote. We should also encourage job growth and allow our diversity to assist in job growth, as we need taking ideas from other cultures who have relocated here, who might have ideas on how to improve the city. And we should listen to all available ideas and pick the ones we find the most effective for Greensboro. That's it. Thank you. Thank you for coming out to the forum.
Please join me in thanking these gentlemen for their candidacy and their time today.
This has been the 2011 Greensboro Mayoral Candidate Forum, presented by the Piedmont Triad League of Women Voters. To learn more about this year's candidates, please visit ncvoterguide.org.